This is not a task. This is your bi, or sometimes tri-weekly, Sierra Celine broadcast, mocking the existence of the Purge as sanctioned by the U.S., movie industry? Insults of class 4 and lower have been authorized during the viewing of The Purge, but anything regarding the movie's lack of subtlety has been deemed too easy. As your hostess, I have been granted immunity from The Purge, and will not be driven mad by watching the same movie 3 separate times. Blessed be our founding fathers and America, a nation reborn. May God be with you all. Good day, boils and ghouls. As I hope that I established in the Zombievers review, I'm Canadian. And outside of a few trips to Disney World that this snobbish goth queen would never admit to, I've never been to the States. Which is weird, considering the vast majority of media that I consume is American. Meaning that the way that I relate to the United States is through the way that they represent themselves in media, whether that be fictional movies or, the constant barrage of news that tries to ruin my day. And what horror franchise has tried to represent the state of America today quite like The Purge? Really, I'm just assuming that these films are documentaries for you guys at this point. And since I know that some of you are joining us from the United States, I thought it might be nice to take a look at the movies that best represent your country. The first time that I heard about The Purge, it was when someone described the concepts to me. A world where crime and unemployment are at an all-time low, but it's only because they take one lawless night a year to release all of their violence and negative emotions. Purging, if you will. I thought it sounded like a cool concept, debated whether or not we thought that would work, and ultimately came to the conclusion that if all crime was legal for a night, I'd probably just shoplift a lot of clothes and not be super interested in murder. But regardless, it was still a concept that I was eager to see. And when the first movie was released back in 2013, I was let down. The movie follows this wealthy family trying to stay safe in the Purge, but their security gets compromised when the son lets a homeless man in, and suddenly all their wealthy neighbors want to kill them. Upon first viewing this movie, I remember being disappointed that they introduced this countrywide problem and then only focused on a small corner of it. Staying within this one family's home was kind of a weird choice, but to be fair, it was only made for budgetary reasons. Writer-director James DeMonaco admitted that he would have preferred to film outside, but they only had 19 days to shoot and $2.7 million to work with, so they were kinda stuck inside. The movie introduces a number of things that would later become staples for the franchise. The masks were introduced to give the Purgers the same sense of feeling of Halloween trick-or-treaters, as though they were treating the Purge like some sort of holiday. It's also mentioned that the Purge is a hell of a lot easier to deal with when you're rich and can afford security. Poor people, on the other hand, just kind of exist to get picked off. If you're watching this movie in a vacuum, separated from the sequels, then these plot points feel kind of unnecessary and distracting from what's going on. But I just happened to watch the prequel before I watched the first movie this time. And when I did that, I realized that adding the context of the subsequent movies changes this first movie quite a bit. All of the Purge movies after this follow people who are at high risk for being killed. Either they come from low-income households, or they're targeted politicians, or they're out on the streets for some reason. But here, this family was in as good a position as they possibly could have been. They weren't targeted, nobody really hated them, well, besides their neighbors, but that was for petty reasons. They just happened to get mixed up in it when they decided to rescue this one injured homeless man. Or rather, the son decided to help him. Father Ethan Hawke is more than on board for returning this homeless man to the people hunting him, and he's even on board for torture if that's what it takes. In any other Purge movie, this guy would have been the villain. And as much as I wouldn't call him the hero per se, he is this movie's focal point. So in the context of the subsequent sequels, it is kind of interesting that out of the 4 movies that they released, one of them focuses on how the Purge negatively affects rich people as well. And if the movie had known that that's what it was doing, I think they could have had a lot of fun with that. As it is, it mostly boils down to this one scene where Mother Lena Headey is arguing with Ethan Hawke about whether or not they're doing the right thing, and maybe they're the bad guys. Ooh.
Chris, look look at us. Look at this man. Look what we're doing to him.
But they could have played with that idea of them possibly being the villains a lot more. The characters here are all just sort of bland. The most interesting among them is definitely Lena Headey, and that might just be because she's Lena Headey.
Did you enjoy Grace's purge party, Mr. Halverson?
I guess the little boy is okay. When he's not being bland, he's building little robot creatures and rescuing homeless people, so that's pretty neat. All in all, it just isn't that memorable of a movie. It's a cool concept, but end of day, it's just another home invasion story with an admittedly pretty fun villain.
If you don't deliver him by the aforementioned time, we'll release the beast on him. And on you.
But if you want to see the same thing done better, watch Funny Games. 4 masked outdoor lesbians out of 10 for this first movie. The second movie is Purge Anarchy, which came out in 2014. And fortunately for us, it did have a much higher budget than its predecessor. It was actually allowed to take to the streets and explore the way that the Purge affects multiple people, not just, this one rich family. We don't really follow one person in particular, but multiple groups of people who, for one reason or another, wound up getting stuck outside during the Purge. They all meet up and form one large group, and then the rest of the movie just kind of follows them trying to get to safety. Again, there aren't really any memorable characters here, but there don't really need to be. The event of the Purge is the focal point. The characters are little more than tools that get you from one crazy thing to another. It becomes a sort of bloody Alice in Wonderland, as our characters are trying to find their way home and keep getting caught up in different traps. The theme of the Purge being unfairly imbalanced in the wealthy's favor comes up mostly through the characters of Eva and Callie, a financially struggling mother and daughter who can't afford security. At the beginning of the Purge, Eva's father sells himself to be killed off by a wealthy family, all to secure some extra money for his family, so we see how important the accumulation of wealth has become under these conditions.
It's how the wealthy purge, baby. They buy poor and sick people, and they take them into their homes, and they kill them where they're safe.
This movie also introduces the Anti-Purge Group, a group of activists who are looking to put a stop to the Purge. But this movie also seems to have some sort of subplot where they're trying to prove to us that murder is bad. Leo is this shadowy, morally questionable type who helps our cast of characters, but begrudgingly, and he's constantly trying to sneak off to do something. And at some point, it's revealed that he's trying to get revenge for his son's hit and run. Eva and Callie try to convince him not to purge, but he goes into the guy's house anyway, holds him at gunpoint, and then decides not to kill him. A little later on, this guy shows up again and saves Leo just to hammer in that message that killing is bad. Which is something I hope we all knew before now, right? Right? All in all, this movie utilizes its concept much better than the first one did. I like the way it explores its universe in this weirdly episodic structure, and it gave us some pretty cool Halloween costume ideas, available now at Party City. I'd even give this movie 6.5 God masks out of 10. But then,
this guy, I don't know what I said.
In 2016,
grab him by the pussy.
Something
I don't even know what you're talking about.
Happened. Another Purge movie came out, yes, but more than that.
They're competing with me.
A certain election began feeding into the imagination of the Purge writers. Both the first and second Purge movies reflect a clear cynicism regarding the state of society. There's this whole the rich eat the poor, if anything goes wrong the government is behind it mentality. But the 2016 election divided America, and the 2016 Purge film, Election Year, reflects a divided Purge universe. We have the anti-Purge protesters, nothing more than a group of radicals in the second movie, and now a full political party, led by some blonde lady who doesn't at all sound like someone in real life. And the new Founding Fathers have kind of always been a part of this franchise, but they've never been established to be led by some old white guy until now. The whole plot to the movie is that not Hillary Clinton is becoming a threat to the Purge, so the new Founding Fathers call out a hit on her on Purge night. It actually felt so much like the previous movie, to be honest, especially considering Leo is back, now the bodyguard to not Hillary Clinton. At this point, the political metaphor has somehow managed to become too subtle and not at all. On the one hand, we all know what they're getting at here. The people who still support the Purge are all supposed to be Trump supporters. The people who support the abolition of the Purge are all minorities and stuff. We get it. Except if they wanted to do the whole political metaphor, they could have gone hard with it and done something like 2020's The Hunt. You know, make the politics blatant, make statements, have people hold actual conversations, things like that. As it is, it feels like the movie gets distracted from its whole political metaphor to briefly advertise for Universal's Halloween Horror Nights. Look at all the cool characters you could meet if you come to Universal theme parks with your family this fall. Annoying Harley Quinn knockoff, scary foreign accident murder gang, Confederate flag scary guy. All this and more can be yours for just the low price of $100 a day. This movie is so cynical that the ending proved to be the only surprising thing here. Not Hillary Clinton actually wins the election, and the Purge is abolished. They have this whole "we can do better" moment, and the people who were systemically getting killed off are happy that that's not happening anymore. Happy day! Racism is solved forever! Yay! All in all, this movie just feels kinda unnecessary. I liked the weird Alice in Wonderland quality to the Purge anarchy. I thought it was a great way to introduce us to this universe. And I even like that this movie decided to narrow its interests down a little bit and focus on just one character. You know, the not Hillary Clinton character. But I was expecting a lot more from a movie that decided to take Trump head on with its title. Really, what we got was just more of the same from the last movie. I guess that because this franchise has always been mildly political, they thought they could just repackage the same thing from last time and release it at a more profitable moment. 3 Harley Quinn knockoffs out of 10.
Happy Purge, you old fuck!
But as it turns out, America was much more dystopian than the Purge franchise could ever have guessed, given room for a sequel. Or, well, a prequel. The first Purge was released in 2018, and as someone who has worked in a DVD store before, allow me to just complain about the fact that it has the most confusing title ever. Hi, I'm looking for the first Purge. Okay, cool. So, like the first movie, or... yeah, you know, the first Purge. Yeah, I got that. Yeah. So the first movie or the fourth one? I had an immediate dislike for this movie the moment I heard that title. But now that I've actually watched it, how does it fit into the Purge universe? This is the first movie in the franchise that James DeMonaco didn't direct, although he did write and co-produce it. DeMonaco is the main guy behind the scenes, by the way, and The Purge is largely the way that it is because of him. He came up with the concept after a bout of road rage, and his wife made a comment about how nice it would be if everyone could get 1 free murder a year. Add to that DeMonaco's deep fear of firearms and his cynicism about the direction that his country was taken, and suddenly you understand why The Purge is the way that it is. But he gave over a bit of creative control to Gerard McMurray, who actually doesn't have a whole lot of directing credits to his name right now. The biggest title that stuck out to me was a single episode of the new Twilight Zone. But considering the second and third movie are basically the exact same movie, I really don't mind getting fresh minds in on this. And the first Purge does actually come up with some decent ideas. I like the fact that during the first Purge, people are not acting like homicidal maniacs right off the bat. Instead, they're throwing parties and stealing stuff and having sex in public. Which I could be wrong, but I have more faith in humanity than DeMonaco clearly does, and I tend to think that if we suddenly just dropped all laws for a couple of hours, this is more how people would act. People are not homicidal maniacs by nature. Sure, some people are capable of atrocious acts, but your average guy on the street is gonna have to be pushed pretty far to take murder outside of the realm of fantasy. And this movie does a pretty decent job of showing that. The people who do turn straight to murder are doing it because the government is offering them a lot of money to do so, and they aren't in the sort of financial situation to turn that down right now. But that does open up one part of the movie that I'm not entirely sure about, and that is the government actively stating that they want to use the purge to eliminate poor people because poor people have become a burden on the state. In fact, when the neighborhood that they're testing the purge on doesn't immediately turn to murder, the government releases soldiers into the general population to make sure that the right number of people die. This wasn't a new addition to the Purge mythology. We've been aware of soldiers doing this since movie 2. But this is the first time that they stated that the government is doing this with the express intent of killing poor people. And there isn't even any hope for a happy ending this time, because it's a prequel, and we all know that the Purge is going to be a big fad right up until not Hillary Clinton wins the election. In fact, the movie ends with the news outlets announcing that The Purge was a huge success because a lot of people got killed. Which doesn't really make sense because they've been telling the American people that they're testing to see if The Purge can result in a more peaceful society, and it'll take much more time to test that than just the beginning of the next day. At that point, the only thing they know for sure is that a lot of people died. I'm just saying, if they wanted to keep up this charade of caring about world peace, then they could have waited like a couple of weeks or maybe even months to announce the Purge a success. Seriously, how did the entire American population not see through these people? The movie does end with the neighborhood deciding that they don't have to take it, and they all stand up to stop the soldiers from picking them off. It's all well and good. This movie also introduces the idea that the government is tracking purgers, and by doing so, they give them these really cool blue contacts. We all know that the main selling point of this series is just how cool the purgers look in their costumes. So something like those cool blue contacts I was kind of a fan of. And that's all I really have to say about this movie. All in all, I'd give it 6 blue contacts out of 10. The only reoccurring characters that we had, Leo and Dante, are both gone by this movie, which is fine because they were barely even characters anyway. There's no major character to get attached to in this franchise. Even the 2 that I just named, they just kind of show up every once in a while for cameos or to serve the same purpose that they did in the last movie, and then they're gone again. And meanwhile, the only character traits that I can tell you about either of them is they don't like the Purge. This isn't a case where you're tuning into the next Purge movie because you want to know what will become of some beloved character. You're tuning in because you want to see what violence will be perpetrated by what costumed villain. And as far as that goes, I'd say that you're better off sticking to the second movie, Purge Anarchy. It just has more fun with the idea and explores different ways that different groups of people might purge. Poor people from the streets, rich people from the safety of their own homes. And see, that's political commentary that I don't mind, because it's actually coming right out and saying what it wants to say. Rich people are privileged, that's it. It doesn't need to be any more than that, we got it. Generally speaking, I am a big fan of horror movies getting political. Hell, one of my favorite side projects on this channel is tracking the way that different horror movies have addressed feminism. But The Purge always kind of had this feeling of being about more than it could handle. Watching The Purge is kind of like watching your kid brother play dress up. It thinks it looks bigger than it is. That doesn't say that it's entirely worthless as a piece of media. It does seem to reflect a cynicism that a lot of people in the States seem to feel right now. Keep in mind that I'm not American, so I can't say for sure, but you guys seem to be in a constant state of not trusting your government and being afraid of who has access to firearms. In such an environment, I bet the idea of your kindly neighbor coming over with a shotgun to kill you and your entire family for some previously unexpressed reason might seem pretty compelling. And I'm not trying to say that my country is perfect. Hell, we've got a lot of our own problems to fix. But I don't know if I can quite relate to this level of mistrust in my government yet. And as such, I don't know if this franchise strikes a chord with me in quite the same way that it might an American viewer. What I see when I watch these movies is just an endless series of unnecessary violence paired with some pretty cute Halloween costume ideas. Bloody Prom Queen look now available at Party City for just $40.99. The Purge is not one of my favorite horror franchises, but I will admit that they have some pretty good ideas scattered infrequently amongst 4 movies. And I might put the second one on for background noise every now and again. They aren't very good movies, but sadly they found just the right audience that could relate to its level of cynicism. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel and click that little bell thingy to get notified, because next time we're talking about Psycho 3, and trust me when I say that you won't want to miss it. Give this video a like if you enjoyed it, and while you're down there, why don't you leave me a comment? Let me know what your favorite Purge movie is. Thank you so much for watching, my pets, and I will see you next time.